So, hello. Good afternoon. My family just walked in, so I know it's time to start. They are from Charleston, South Carolina, and they came in yesterday afternoon. And so my two granddaughters go to Clemson and they're on spring break. So they are here and good. So it's Kareen, Carlin, and Cameron. Carlin is Carlin May for Marilyn May. At least I take it that way. Anyway, Carol and I are so glad that you're here today. Carol Peterson had asked us a while ago if we would present for Women's Fellowship. This is our second book, and we couldn't work it in on the calendar because when you work with publishers, you never know when your book's going to be ready, and it all depended on the launch date, which was in February. And anyway, we are having a book signing in Estero at Barnes & Noble on a Saturday the 13th. We tried to get into a closer Barnes & Noble into Naples, but they're sort of restructuring and they're in kind of a mess. So we said, well, we would take Estero. So anyway, we're excited for that. And we've had I've had an interview on a Afternoons with Mike. And he's on a Florida, radio station. And he said, oh, it'll be about 12 minutes. Well, you know me, by the time we got through, it was almost an hour. And we had such a good time together. And they also did a press release. And you'll see that with the pictures on the table. And we also have 2 books. Some of you came to the presentation of the Promise Piece 4 years ago. Can you raise your hand if you remember that? Okay, we do have a following. Good. That would have been this cover. And as you can see, Carol and I have our presentation outfits on today. So they're a little old, aren't they, Carol?
Yeah.
They're a little old, but we decided we would do that. So we've got a few copies of this Promise Piece left, and they're $10. And then this is our new one, and it is called The Power of Friendship and Lessons Learned from Lifetime Friends. And our publisher thought that we should be senior ambassadors because of our age and our knowledge, he said. So we're trying to decide how much knowledge we have to share. But if you read the book, I think you will be able to say, I did that in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. So it's a fun book. And I also want to mention that Pastor Mark did the foreword to it. Carol, do you want to show him Pastor Mark's picture? I think most of you know him, but he wrote such a nice little intro and said that, you know, life isn't just all the cookies and good things over on the table, but life is also full of struggles and disappointments. And I will refer to that with the resurrection, which he wrote in the back of the book. So he wrote, and we gave both of the books to Pastor Jim and Karen, and they're reading them. And I also have worked very closely with Sam and Wanda, and they were so helpful in getting set up today. And I don't see them right now, but if you will mention to them, thank you for all the time that they gave to us in, you know, getting ready for this. In fact, I think this is one of the first real meetings. I know they've had a couple of meals here, but I don't think they've had too many meetings. So we are on the main floor here. And in fact, Mike, I want to thank Mike. He just stepped in the closet. Thank you, Mike. He told me, he says, you are the guinea pigs. as far as getting the sound system worked out. So I hope you can hear me, and I have my instructions where I can step and don't step. Oh, and he's telling me to get back right now. So I will stand back here. Okay, well, I told you a little bit about the book and the fact that we have testimonials of people who wrote, and somebody wrote that Carol is just an
Tom Brady.
admiration for her. Who was that? Carol?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady's mother wrote, and she's a Tom Brady fan. So anyway, she said, as shared by two very relatable, joyful, and positive focused women, I don't know about this, but who possess infinite wisdom and warm sense of humor through life's joys and challenges. She signed it Galen Brady, loving wife, mother of Tom, and 3 beautiful daughters. And she was a cancer survivor. And as you know, Carol is a stroke survivor. And that's where the first book came from. I heard a little voice, and it kept saying, promise, promise, promise. This was after Chuck had called and told us that Carol had had her stroke in New York, Syracuse, New York. They were on a trip. So Art and I decided to drive there. I said, I've got to be with her. I've just got to be with her. And especially after Chuck said she has a 48 critical care period. And I kept hearing promise, and I thought, I don't think Carol and I made a promise other than the little pinky promises as kids. We've known each other since kindergarten. God revealed to me what promise means. And we got to the hospital, St. Joseph Hospital in Syracuse. Chuck met us and brought us up the elevator, told us Carol doesn't look quite the same as she did the last time you saw her, and her right side is paralyzed. And I thought, God, give me strength and tell me what this promise is. It was really driving me crazy. And we walked in the room, and there was Carol, and the nurses put her kind of sitting up. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Do you remember any of this?
I do, yes.
Okay.
But I didn't then.
You didn't then,
No.
but you do now. Okay. I walked over to her and gave her a great big hug. And her right side was paralyzed, so she had a little tear come down her left cheek. And we just embraced, and she could do this with her left hand. She was telling me hi. She was glad I was there. And it still wasn't revealed to me what the promise was. But the next day, two of her sons and Chuck were there, and we stayed in the same hotel they did. And I said, I have to spend some time alone with Carol. So I did. And in our conversation, which wasn't much because she couldn't talk, she couldn't walk, she could make little hand movements, but I kind of knew her body language. And I said, Carol, we've known each other since kindergarten. We just retired. We're going to write our life story. Now,
I shook my head. I didn't know what a book was.
So I pursued it. I'm sort of a pursuer, aren't I?
Yeah, yes, she is.
So she was in the hospital for 11 days, and Chuck had a private plane from Michigan come and bring her back. They went together, and they had a doctor aboard.
Mm-hmm.
And she was at Mary Free Bed Rehabilitation Center in Grand Rapids. And I, of course, had called all our friends. We have a group of 10 that have met since we graduated.
Right.
And the 11th one lives in Maryland, so she can't come to all of our luncheons and fun things. But she was just in this past year because our school turned 100 years old, and they had a great big open house. And Nancy came in, and I've got a picture down on the table of the girls who are living. We've lost 3 of the 10. and one was in 12, and two were last year. We had
Yeah.
a sad year last year. We also lost some of the mates of our dear friends. So I was at Christie's grief class. I don't know if you know about Christie's grief class, but I'm giving a little selling point here. It helped me an awful lot. I had been through a grief class 30 years ago when my first husband passed away suddenly. And you know who was with me? She was with me through it all. And of course, I was with her through her stroke. And so we just want to share that a little bit with you about the first book. You might say, why are you sitting on a park bench? Why are you dressed the same way you were 7 years ago? Well, Carol couldn't talk too much, but I decided, I had been an educator, that I was going to get her to talk. And I knew that through her PT at the rehabilitation center, she'd be able to start talking too. We found a cute little park just down the street. You probably know Plummer Park.
The Plummer Park.
Okay, Carol, I said, Carol, show me a park that we can talk, where we can talk.
She's always asking me to do things, you know, assignments. Yes, teach. So I brought her to Lee Plummer Park. That was the beginning of the park bench conversations. Many more.
Many more. We've been there several times. And just sitting there on a bench, our bench there swings, so we can swing back and forth. And we talk and we see the pond and the birds and people walking their kids and dogs. And it's just a real nice little park. And so I started interviewing Carol. One of the first questions I asked her was, I said, God? And she said,
the center of my life. He has helped me so much. And he now has to give me what is my purpose. I can't do anything I used to do. I can't play tennis. I can't walk or talk very well. I have aphasia, as you probably know. And I had an ischemic stroke. It was a part of my life, and people were very kind, and I was very grumpy. Yeah, I had to go at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they say, hi, Carol, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Well, I apologized later because I knew they could help me. Then one lady asked me if I'd ever taken yoga, and I said yes for 3 years. She said, every time I give you an assignment or to do something, do it. Do it as many times as I tell you to do it, and you get better. And I did, and I am better. Thank God.
So when she said center, she meant center. So we have kept God the center. Not that he wasn't before, but he really was after the death I experienced and after her stroke. It took that to really make us see that friendship is wonderful. Friendship is a God thing. And that's what we write in our book. We really think it's special and it's a God thing. And so anyway, Carol, through many, many, many years, kept making progress. And she loved to be with people, and I could see that. And our girls group would get together once a month, and we would go to lunch, and she just really liked that and liked the communication. She wasn't real easy to understand at first, but we didn't give up on her. And I guess that's a testimony not to give up on people. In fact, she didn't tell you, and I know she wouldn't. Here is a picture in the first book of Carol and Chuck. They asked her at Mary Freebed,
what do you want to do?
Well, you tell the story.
No, you tell.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You tell.
they asked Carol if she could do one thing, what it would be. And she said, I want to dance again. Well, she was just learning how to walk again, and we knew that it was going to be a few years before she
Yeah.
could do that, right?
Right.
But they came in and they took pictures of Chuck and Carol. It was on television, local television, it was on billboards. They were advertising Mary Free Bed Rehabilitation Hospital, but they were also using Carol and her husband Chuck as their witness of what she wanted to do, and all of a sudden she could dance after a few years. And so, you know, I think that's so important to hear success stories, and especially as senior citizens. Now, we've all probably been called senior citizens,
Yeah.
golden oldies.
Yes.
They have called us senior ambassadors because we answer questions. And there are questions at the back of our new book. So if you're in a group, if you ever wanted to read it for a book club or a Bible study, or different guilds have been interested, there are questions in the back that are already, you know, for you to use. So anyway,
it started in the Plummer Park, and we had some adventures, and we would talk about the adventures. And one week we went to read what Marilyn had written, and she'd written a lot. And we went to a cottage up north, and we were really, really working hard to get it done. And all of a sudden, I walked up to the window and a tree fell down in the front yard. I turned around and I said, Marilyn, that tree's gone. And she said, come on, we better go to the bathroom. In the bathroom, there are no windows. Well, we did. And then we looked out the upstairs window. We couldn't believe it. We were in, the tree fell down across the driveway. There was wires, and we had been in a straight line wind storm. Didn't have any lights, didn't have any food. We were going to go out to eat. And then her neighbor came over and asked us if we wanted some food. We were starving. Yes. Yes, please. And then they got out with their saw the
chainsaws. The neighbors all came over. Again, friendship. They were there to cut trees down. Yep.
Yeah.
We couldn't get out of the driveway. The only thing we could do, because it was in quite a remote area, was jump in a boat if we wanted something. Yeah. And the first day, I think we were just so stressed out. What are we going to do? So we decided to call it our adventure. We had been Carol Ford Jennings, and I always called her Ford, and I was Marilyn Lucky Emery. She called me Lucky. So we were Ford and Lucky. And when we traveled with our husbands abroad especially, she was Carlita and I was Marlena. So
there's somebody else. I called her Lou and I was Thelma.
After the windstorm, we were Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
And so every once in a while, if you hear us call each other that, you know it was due to that adventure. But we did get out 3 days later, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I had some frozen food we took out of the freezer and thawed, but we had no way to cook it.
And no lights.
And no lights.
We didn't have any lights to read the book.
We put candles out in the evening, and we would sit by candlelight and try to write. Yeah, so it was quite remote up there. But we got out 3 days later, and I was getting nervous because she didn't bring enough medication for too long, right?
Sorry about that.
I thought we're going to get in the boat, we're going to have to go in town. But
Yeah, they
we-
got that tree across the driveway
yes.
out.
And
so-
once that was out, we could leave. We had called our guys, but we couldn't plug our cell phones in.
Yeah.
And our neighbors did have a generator, so that was quite helpful. But anyway, we've been through a lot together as little kids, and there are so many things of our lives that parallel. We walked to school together because we lived on the same block. We graduated high school together. We did community college together. We graduated Aquinas College together.
Mhm.
We both have had 2 marriages, 3 children, and now we both each have a great grandson.
His son.
And they're probably a year different.
Yeah.
But we certainly didn't plan that. So here we are today on a park bench with our hats on in our church where we feel comfortable. And do you have some people from your club, PEO?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say she had invited some of her PEO sisters, so I wondered if any of them had made it today. But anyway, this is a great group, and we just want to tell you a little bit about our new book. The first book was pretty much our past, our growing up years, getting married, and it brought us up to Carol's stroke. Then a woman came to us who read the book, and she said, Marilyn and Carol, I think that you ought to continue your book. And we said, oh, a trilogy? Do 3 little books? And she said, no, 1 big book. So this one is 100 pages, and this is 300 pages. So anyway, you want to tell them about Diane, Carol?
We met with Diane. She is a good friend. Oh. And she said, you need a literary agent. I said, what's a literary agent? I didn't know. She would call people and see if we could talk about her book and stuff like that. But Diane is just like us. She's a riot. And one day, I was taking Marilyn somewhere, and we came home, and there were great big boxes on her doorstep. I said, Marilyn, look at the boxes. The book boxes, the book's in, we got the books. Well, Diane we called Diane right away, and she said she would help us in the future when we wanted to speak about the book. And she is a wonderful person, wonderful.
Diane came up with the word superagers. She said, all this senior business, forget it. Be a superager. You 2 are charged. You're ready to go. So we like that better than being just senior citizens or golden agers or senior ambassadors. But we have, in the present, we talked all about our retirement years and what we've done and how Carol has advanced and our children and our grandchildren. We have grandkids in college now. In fact, Art and I are going home in a couple of weeks because our grandson is getting married. And Carol and Chuck are going back home as Michigan because their grandson is graduating from Michigan State. So we still have ties back and forth.
Yep.
And it works because we can fly. Art and I will fly, and then we'll come back and spend a few more weeks, and then in May, we'll go home for the summer. So anyway, we may be in the winter season of our lives, but we have not slowed down. And I think the reason we have been as active and healthy as we have been is because we have something to look forward to. We have a purpose. And she mentioned that before. And we believe that we all have a purpose. And I know they asked me a couple of years ago if I would be president of the Women's Fellowship. And I thought, I'm retired and I came here to vacation. But I did it. And now Carol Peterson and her sister Linda is helping her. They're co-presidents. And then just before us were Becky and Pam. I see them right here at the
Yep.
first table. In fact, they were the ones who were instrumental in getting us to do the promise piece. But getting back to
The book.
the book.
I want to read something there.
Okay, you
Here.
read it.
Can you
Yes,
hold
I'll
that?
hold it.
Okay. After making a couple of emergency stops to the Naples Community Hospital last year, Carol understands that God is in control of every situation, every day of her life. Although her journey has had several highs and low periods, the Lord keeps giving her hope and strength for that appointed time when she when she meets her forever sisters in the halls of heaven. I know there is someone in the audience who knows what I mean. I'm going to heaven, I know, but the journey going forward is what I'm trying to get a handle on. And I said that we were our forever sisters. We lost 3 of them. And in the halls of heaven, we were partying. We were partying. Thank you.
It's been said that life is a journey, and we believe that. And we're so happy you came today to journey with us. We also believe that we have choices. And Carol and I have chosen to put God first in our life.
Yep.
He is the center of our lives. And our faith, family, and friends are very important to us. I'm sure they are to everybody sitting in this room. We're very aware that this is a disconnected world. And in order to stay connected, you need to have friends. You need to have people you can talk to and call. And I think the greatest commandment says we should love the Lord our God with all our heart, souls, mind, strength. And the second is to love our neighbors as ourselves. And yesterday in the sermon, Pastor Jim mentioned that God loves us and we love others. And it was around asking forgiveness too. And the Lord's Prayer was part of the scripture reading. And so in order to be a good friend to others, we have to be good listeners. We have to have a heart for other people. And I know probably everyone in here today has friends. After our last book presentation, do you remember, Carol? Do you remember what some of the people would come and tell us?
I haven't spoken to my friend in a lot of years. I think I'll call her. Yeah.
And some would buy an extra book and say, I'm going to give it to my friend for their birthday or Christmas or whatever, because we want them to hear your story. And it made me think, there is a message, not that the book is full of scripture or spiritual things, but it's just where love dwells, and love is from the first and greatest commandment. And if we can all love others, what a wonderful world it would be. You know, our disconnect might not be quite as distant as what we are. Okay, we'd like to tell you about our Draco sisters. We chose the word Draco. This was a campfire group who became Horizon Club girls. Did any of you grow up with Horizon Club? I know there was Girl Scouts out there were Bluebirds, but there were groups. We happened to be Campfire. Well, we had to name our group, and a Draco is a constellation, and it represents the sun, the stars, nature, and we thought we loved to be outside. We would get a cottage and rent it in the summer and go as a group to Grand Haven, to the beach on Lake Michigan. Some of you may have done things like that too. And so Draco seemed to fit us. In fact, in our radio I was telling you, I had the radio talk with Mike, and he said, "Oh, I love that. The Draco girls. Is that what you called us? Called each other? We had another name for each other. Carol?
Draco drips.
So when we were together having a lot of fun, we would call ourselves the Draco Drips.
Yeah.
We don't want other people to call us drippy. We could be drippy amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
But I asked the girls, first they wrote an article in the first book. And before Marcia, our first sister who passed away, we knew she had cancer. And Carol and I took Marcia and Donna, her best friend, out to lunch. And we said, Marcia, if you're up to it or we can write it for you, can you give us some of your thoughts? Because we'd like to use it for the book. And she did. She wrote, she had been a surgical registered nurse and just a very, very wonderful person. And it was hard losing our first sister. And then this past year, we lost one to dementia, and then another one who had surgery and it didn't go well, and we lost her. So we are down to 7, but actually we're 8 when we count Nancy and Marilyn. And we're glad to have the 8 sisters. But they, in the second book, they wrote a piece for past, they wrote a piece for present, and they wrote a piece for future. Some of them wrote future. You might say, okay, Marilyn, if past is past, we understand that. Present is what you're going through now. What is future about? And I said, future is looking ahead. And like Carol said, we're looking ahead being in a heavenly space with our sisters, right? And all of our loved ones. And so they wrote the nicest pieces for the future. And some of them talked about leaning on Jesus. Some talked about all the blessings that they've received over these 80 years. We turned 80. In fact, as I say 80, I look at my family because they had us all come to Johns Island in South Carolina. The family went for arts in my 80th birthdays. And we had a party. Oh, it was beautiful. And we boated. We just had the greatest time. And are we ashamed to say our age? No. Are you?
No.
Good. I think we worked hard for our 80
Yeah,
years.
we did.
And we've been through some things. But we have chosen to stay as friends. And our remaining friends, we get together when Carol and I come home. She has been down here for about 8 months over many years,
Yeah.
right? So we started 3 months. Now we're up to 6 months. And so we'll be home about 6 months. And the girls will go out to lunch. And we talked about how special we feel to have had this group since we've been 5 years old. I mean, how many girls, how many women can say that and look at their friend and know they've been through everything, elementary, middle school, high school, homecomings, proms, dances, senior trips.
Yep.
Do you remember our senior trip?
Yeah, I do.
Do you remember where we went?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. We took a train and our whole class went. We had a whole week learning about Washington, D.C. We met with Gerald R. Ford. I don't know if that rings a bell with you. He was our president, but at that time he was a congressman, and he took us through all the chambers and explained what he did. And little did we know that someday he would be a president, but he was. And he is buried in Grand Rapids, Michigan, along the Grand River at the Gerald R. Ford Museum. So if you ever get to Grand Rapids, that's one place a lot of people like to go and see the history behind that. And we love our city. We both are natives. We both were born in Grand Rapids, went to all those colleges and high schools, colleges. Chuck worked in Grand Rapids. He went to a different school than we did, but he has accepted us, right?
East Grand Rapids, East Grand Rapids.
And we were the Lee School Calvinator cadets because we had a Calvinator firm factory there. And so we got many teasings from Chuck over the years that we were the Calvinator cadets. But we did go to East Grand Rapids for many of our park bench conversations.
Yes.
We sat on Reed's Lake, and my mother grew up in East Grand Rapids, and her little church was there. And when she passed away, her funeral was at this little church, and now they have raised that, and there are condominiums. But it was nice to know my parents met in that area, married in that area. Mom was, her funeral was in that area. But Carol and I go and we sit on the shores of Reed's Lake in East Grand Rapids. And then we walk over and have a special treat.
Ice cream.
We go to Jersey Junction.
Yeah.
And
that's
that's
a picture in the book.
You know where that is?
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know where it is.
Okay, I think I might have it, but it shows Carol and me. And so once we did our park benches in Grand Rapids and had ice cream, we had to go have ice cream here. So Sweet Annie's, where else?
Where Mr. Bentley.
Mr. Bentley, that's a new one. That's over by the theater, by the Playhouse, right across from it. And they've just opened.
Yeah, and BB's.
BB's, it's in the mall. Yeah. Over by Chico's. I think you all know where that is, the theater that in that mall. And so we will go and have our ice cream, and we feel fulfilled after we've done that. But when we were kids, we would walk about 3 or 4 blocks, and we went to 2 bars as children. Can you tell us about those bars, Carol?
Not the kind of bar you're thinking of. It was I can't think of
Dairy bar.
Dairy bar, and the what is the other one? I don't know. Anyway, we used to go and party in there, and then walk home alone sometimes. But I want to tell you about Marilyn. Oh my God, she is a sweetheart. I mean, if it hadn't been for her and Chuck, I might not have talked again. But she made me talk, teachers always give me this, give me that. And yes, teach. And then Chuck and I used to drive back and forth to Grand Haven in Grand Rapids. And he would do the street signs. He would have to say them, and then I have to say that. And then the tongue has to be in the right place. And, it was real fun. But Marilyn, she is a doll. She writes so beautifully. I would give her an idea, and she would write 2 or 3 paragraphs on it. And I loved it. I loved to read it. She would read it to me, and she is marvelous. She tells it like it is, and then she follows up with an example. It's very, very lovely how she writes.
Well, thank you. I didn't expect that. Anyway, we've always worked as a team, and she shoots ideas at me, and I'll add to hers, or I'll shoot ideas to her, and we can see it from a global instead of just a personal place. And it's the same with our families. They just had their 50th a couple years ago and had their family all together and had a weekend, a marvelous weekend, right, at Grand Haven.
Yeah, you did.
And then we took our family up to Mackinac Island. I don't know if any of you have heard it. It's in Michigan. I know my family knows it. But we went up there for several days and stayed, and they have really good fudge there, don't they, girls? Really good. they all got their Mackinac Island t-shirts. But when you go over, you take a ferry boat over. And so you can't have any wheels over there. Everything is walking, or you can get horses and
Horses.
carriages.
Yep.
You can go to the Grand Hotel, which a lot of the governors come and have conferences because they want to get away from all the rush and hustle and bustle. And so you take the little ferry over, you take a little, they call it a horse taxi, and you walk every place. And it's wonderful for people who can still get around. And Art told me he just made reservations to go in June. It's the Lilac Festival. And everybody, the kids get out of school and you want to go up and see all the lilacs, and you feel like you've gone back centuries. You really do. The French owned it at one time. And so we're glad to have Mackinac Island back. So if you ever get to Michigan and you want to go to Mackinac Island, you go across the Mackinac Bridge. Carol and I live in Lower Michigan, which they call the Mitten. And then Upper Michigan, there's the bridge. And this is kind of how Upper Michigan looks. So if you want to go to the island, you go to Mackinac City and you take the boat over and you take your suitcases. They'll take you up to your hotel where you're going to stay. There are all kinds of restaurants and wonderful, wonderful stores. And we used to really love it, but now they have big ocean liners that are coming.
Yeah.
And all these people get off. Here they are shopping. But we like to go places too and travel a lot and like to take boating cruises and things. So anyway, getting back to our sisters, they all wrote a piece. Pastor Mark wrote a piece in the end of the book. He says, I know you and Carol. I know some hardships you've been through, and I know how you both have been on committees here at the church, and you've been active. You read scripture. And so we said, will you write the foreword in our book? And he said, yes, I will. So I'd like to read just a little bit of what Pastor Mark wrote. I was moved in this book by the sacrifices these two women made for one another for the purpose of caring for each other at various life turns. The great German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer once defined a friend. A friend is someone who possesses and implements an irrational commitment to the well-being of someone else. Their irrational commitment to each other becomes evident in this book, so much so that their love for each other can only be Christian. With great enthusiasm, I commend this book to others with an inspirational and uplifting read. So that was marvelous. And we decided that once the book was published, that we would go, the four of us, went to Naples Church and made an appointment with Dr. Reverend Mark, and he took us on a tour through the church.
Yep.
He brought us to a little conference room and we gave him the book, and Art has a picture on his phone of that dedication. Art, do you want to walk around and show them the dedication picture? Okay. And he was so happy that we came. And Art and I had to go to Naples one Sunday. We were visiting friends, and so we stopped. We sat in the front row of the balcony so he could see us. And he had a big smile, and we saw his children, because the children sang in the choir. And it was just very nice. They were so welcoming to us when they knew we were from Marco Island and came to visit Pastor Mark. And then Carol and Chuck went and visited him too and went to lunch.
Yeah, took them to lunch, and we had a wonderful time talking about, he likes it. He feels that he has a challenge up there. And, you know, He left us, but he's in good shape and good. I think he's happy. The two girls and a boy are in the same school, and his wife can work not far from where they live. And the day we had lunch, they bought a house. Yeah.
Well, we can't leave you without telling you about the pandemic, because I think in some ways it affected all of us. But anyway, when I look back on Carol's and my life, we were World War II babies. We were known as war babies. My father worked in Ypsilanti, Michigan. They called him from his job to build war planes and different things for World War II. Then my dad was drafted and he went to Europe as a tanker. And I didn't have a daddy for 2 years, and my older sister didn't. She was probably about 4 when he went, and I was a year and a half. So my daddy was a picture on the end table in his army uniform. And I would talk to him. And when I said my now and lay me down to sleep at night, I would pray that my daddy would come home. But my mother tells me a cute story. I thought it was cute. I embarrassed her. But every time I would see a man in a uniform, I would run up to him and say, "Are you my daddy?" I was looking for my daddy. And she said, "Honey, you can't do that. Your daddy's home on the end table. He'll be home to you." And he did come home. He was in one piece. He was a wonderful dad. He was a builder. And it was so good to have him home. I remember picking him up at the train station, and a bunch of relatives and neighbors came, and there he came with his little duffel bag, and he had little candies for Joni, my older sister. Joni, same name as our Joni. And he brought my mother back jewelry and nylons from France when he was over there, because we didn't have a lot of niceties at that time. In fact, my mother had to learn how to drive when Dad was drafted, because she didn't drive. And so you had so much gas. You could go to the grocery store, you could go to church and to doctor's appointments. And if there was anything else, my grandpa would come over and bring us places. And we would go there for dinner, of course, with my grandpa and grandma and my aunts. But anyway, I still remember things of that. And they asked me on that radio interview, they found that so interesting that I still remember that my daddy was a picture till I finally saw him. And my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren got to meet Grandpa Lutke, right? They got to meet Grandpa Lutke. My mother died first, and my dad and I were both widowed at the same time. So we would go golfing together. At that time, some of our relatives lived in the Chicago suburbs, and he'd say, "Tell me whenever you're going, I'll go with you." And so I would take him with me. And when the gals were line dancing the other night for the bargain basket dinner, I thought, I took my dad line dancing when we both were single. But we both did remarry. 10 years later, I married Art, whom you know, and I'm Marilyn Emery now, Marilyn and Art Emery. And when we were getting married, I asked a special friend to stand up with me as my matron of honor.
Yes, she did. It was me. And when she called me, I was in Canada. And I said, "Marilyn, I thought maybe something was wrong, you know." And then she asked me, and I said, "I sure will." And then I hung up the phone and cried.
Carol and Chuck were in Florida, and they came home, they flew home. And needless to say, it was before Carol's stroke, and she gave a marvelous speech at the reception, and we just had so much fun.
Yeah.
And my family was all there, and some of our Draco friends were there,
Yeah.
and friends that we have made, from college over the years. So we've had a lot of things to remember. In fact, Cammie, you weren't born yet when Grandpa and I got married. Yeah, I remember just a few of the little grandkids were there, and that was 20 years ago. So we've been married for 20 years. Well, just a few months after that, we got our call from Chuck that Carol had had a ischemic stroke. And the backstory, of course, is sad, but I saw her. I didn't give up on her. Chuck didn't give up on her. He
No.
brought her all over the country for
Yeah.
different tests. I don't know if you want to talk about those or not.
Well, he dragged me to Alabama, and I said I would go. And what they do is they put a glove on your hand that moves, and then they tell you to do stuff with your right hand. Well, I started out with I could do it, and then I got better, and I got a pretty good handle on it. And I came back to Grand Rapids, and I got a shot, Botox. I took Botox, and my arm would get better. And he drew blood when he gave me he was Dr. Chris. He was so nice. I didn't believe he did that, but then it bled, and I couldn't even move it very good. But I got left-handed, and I can write sort of my name, if you can see it. But yeah, it was pretty good. But I want to tell another story. As a kid, I was an only child, and of course, Mom and Dad just thought I was heaven on earth, but I wasn't. I was a rebel, and I would go up to Marilyn's house, and there were 4 kids, and I loved it. There was noise and lots going on, and then she wanted to come down to my house, and there's nothing to do at my house.
I loved it. It was quiet. I had 4 siblings, 3 sisters and a brother.
Yeah.
She thought it was fantastic. She'd come to play in the sandbox, and we'd roller skate and ride our bikes. And she thought it was fantastic. She taught me how to play solitaire. I couldn't do things like that in my house because it was too noisy. So we spent quite a bit of time together, and that was fun. And I started on the pandemic, and I don't want to leave without telling you that we did quite a bit of writing during that time because there wasn't too much else you could do, as you know. But I would call her and I'd say, "Oh, put your mask on." So Carol would put her mask on, and we'd sit at opposite ends of a park bench. That's how badly we wanted to do that. And our girlfriends would meet, and here we all are with our masks on at a restaurant. They would put us in a back room, and we wanted to see each other so badly, and we would kind of spread out, but where there's a will, there's a way, and we wanted to be together. And so that is what we did. Well, we're getting sort of to the end here. I did want to read something from the spiritual reflections that 2 pastors wrote. Of course, Pastor Mark, I had written about Easter growing up, how it was waking up in the morning and your Easter basket was on the table and the kids would run down, and then we would all put our Sunday best on, our hats, our shoes, everything matched, go off to church. And then as we got a little older, about teenagers, we would have an early morning sunrise service, and we would all go down to the Civic Auditorium, and we would have wonderful Easter meditations. Then we would go back to church, and we would have morning church, Christ arose. And that was one of my favorite times of the year. And then we'd go back at night too and have a night service. Maybe some of you grew up with, you were in church almost all day. But anyway, Pastor Mark had written, and he said, because our God is the God of the third day, on Good Friday, suffering and pain, and on Holy Saturday, in the tomb. But the third day, Christ arose. And I thought, that goes so well with our timing because we'll soon have Holy Week. He wrote, Easter was the third day of the story. Easter was God's day. On Easter, resurrection happened. Easter was the day that pain and sadness was swallowed up in victory. Easter is just one of a series of 3-day stories in the Bible that involves crisis and urgency. When in prison, Joseph and his fellow prisoners, within 3 days, they were set free. The Israelite people arrived at Sinai. God said, be ready on the third day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. So, and do you know, this is a little quiz, how many days was Jonah in the belly of the fish?
3.
3 days. So if you go through your Bible story, your Bible, you'll find many stories of the third day.
Third day.
So anyway, I wanted to add that. And then one of our graduate students,
From high school.
who graduated from high school, is Reverend Dale Kronemeyer, and he has preached his whole life. He was in Michigan, he was in Texas, he ended up in Arizona, and he comes to our 5-year class reunions every year. Well, when we were going to have our 60th class reunion, the pandemic was on and we couldn't have it. We couldn't get together. So we had it the 61st year.
Yeah.
And while we were there, some of the people said, you know, getting together at night, some people don't like to drive at night anymore. Maybe we should make it luncheons. So now we get together for lunch every year because our numbers are getting lesser and lesser, and we love each other more and more each year. So anyway, I asked Dale if he would write for the book, and he did, for our first book and for this book. And he used an example in his book of the 23rd Psalm. God will guide our paths, and someday soon he will bring us to our eternal home where we will see our Jesus. And he says, but for now, I believe that for as long as we have breath, we have purpose. We can still stand amongst the influence of all the negativity, all the pain, all the discouragement, and have the attitude of living and sharing of life with hope and faith. And that's how we'd like to leave you, with hope and faith. We have had hope through our journey, and we hope that you will keep having faith and hope. And I'd like to ask if there are any questions. Mike, do you want to take these microphones around, and then maybe Carol and I can share them? Oh, okay.
Everybody can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, first question, I have some questions and some comments.
Sure.
First question I had, you already answered, was how you got to be designated as senior ambassadors. So you answered that. Was your editor Diane? Okay. And the other thing I want to comment on is that although I was raised in Pennsylvania, I had the same exact childhood as you had. The same circle of friends, although not lifelong friends. But I never heard the game I Send. What is I Send?
All right, you have two teams, a team here and a team across the field. What?
Red Rover.
Oh, I have to repeat the question. She wondered what I send was. Has anybody played the game I send? Well, in Michigan, we each have a team, and the captain of this team would say, I send Carol after Charlie. So Carol had to run, and Charlie had to run, and if she tagged Charlie before Charlie got over our line, she was the winner of I Send, and we would keep doing that. And then the person who got tagged had to come over in your line, and so pretty soon there were no people left on the other side.
Okay, we call it Red Rover.
Oh,
Rover.
okay.
Red Rover sent so-and-so.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing that I want to talk about, what is its significance, if there is any? On the front cover of your book, you have the two of you sitting on a park bench with your hats there. But on the back, you two magically disappeared. Why is that? Is there a significance to that?
Well, I think it goes back, significance to our hats, no hats on the back cover. I
The
knew,
hats are there, you aren't.
I mean, the hats are there, we aren't, but the significance of the hats is that when we were going to have our picture for the first cover, the promise piece, we were in Michigan, and my daughter is a good photographer, and she said, Mother, get Carol, come out to the Thornapple River and have your picture. So
Yeah.
we said, okay, we'll meet you there. Meanwhile, it started to drizzle. And I thought, we're women, we don't want our hair all wet. So I grabbed two hats.
Yeah.
And that started the hats. So we don't always have a hat on the park bench, but for our covers, we do. And for these, so anyway, the back cover is significant that when we go on, our hats will still remain and the park benches will still remain, and we will not be there anymore. Okay, any other questions?
I've got some more comments.
Oh, just a minute, she's got a
The
comment.
one thing that I really enjoyed, I want to tell you this, is our gifts, your inspirational reflections. I got a lot of benefit out of that. And if you ever write another book, when you write your next book, please include a map. Because us folks from Pennsylvania have no idea where any of these places are in Michigan that you're talking about.
Oh,
And one
good.
thing my biggest takeaway from your book was a sentence, you attributed it to someone else, and I don't remember who, but it said, don't cry because it's over, smile because it was. That is beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm done.
Okay, did you hear that? Okay, Karen.
So we've learned about the strength and the power of your friendship through your life events. But I was just wondering if there was ever a time during the course of your friendship when there was some disconnect or a time that you didn't talk. And if that ever happened, how did you reconnect and how did you then reestablish the friendship?
I can how did we reestablish our friendship? There were some years, I went away to Western Michigan University and Carol got married the first time. And I think there was a little disconnect there. I was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which was south of Grand Rapids. I see what you mean about a map. That was very good.
Yeah, very good.
So I was at Western Michigan University, and she was a new wife, and their marriage wasn't, you can say what you want about that.
I won't.
She passed. Okay, she's a happy remarried woman to Chuck, and I think ever since Chuck has been into her life, we have been back together. And it wasn't because we didn't like each other, because we'd still talk on the phone.
It was because my friends were getting married and having babies, and I wasn't. I was single. You know what I did then? I had fun. But Marilyn would call me now and then. We have lunch and keep in touch. And then when I married Chuck, she asked if I wanted to join a group of women who were talking and so forth. But it was a kind of a time when you're so busy and you're having a family. We lost touch. We didn't get together once a month or anything. It was when we got older, we realized we had a good thing with the girls, Draco girls, and we had lunch once a month.
We would call each other if there was something special, like a fashion show or
Yeah.
one of our women's groups were having something, and
Yeah.
and we usually would do it then. Lee, I saw your hand. Oh, she'd like to have a hat Sunday. How many women would wear a hat to church? Raise your hand. Oh, I think we ought to have a hat Sunday. We ought to have a hat Sunday before the people who depart, the snowbirds, go back home.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk to Wanda and Sam and tell them the conclusion of our group meeting today was that we need a hat Sunday, and we'll see what she can pull together. They can pull together. They can pull a lot of things together.
Yeah.
That's cute. Are there any more questions? Easter Sunday. That is. Should we make Easter Sunday our hat Sunday? And tell your friends? I'll tell them in the office. I don't know if they're going to put it in the bulletin or not. But anyway, wear your hat on Sunday, Easter Sunday. It's a couple Sundays away. Okay, any other questions or remarks? This has been so much fun. I want to thank Mike again. He told us we were his guinea pigs because this is just all getting resettled in Disler Hall. And he was working real hard on it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of the type of person who likes to walk around. I couldn't. So we're staying right here, right, Carol? Okay, I do want to say a thank you to Art and Chuck for being so wonderful through all these years. We started writing.
Yeah.
We started writing right after Carol's stroke, and they get us together, and they have shown so much care and love and support to us. Today, Art was carrying everything in from the car, and I thought, I don't even have to ask him. He's just right there with me, being a good husband and a good, wonderful partner. And Chuck, all his care of Carol through her stroke.
Thank you.
He did a marvelous job. He really did. And he's also very good at advertising our book. Wherever he goes. Oh, yes, we're all set up. But he will, whatever group he's in, he'll say, my wife and her friend wrote a book, and then we can get a call and they'll say, will you come and present to our group? Sure we will. Our only problem is our publisher and printer have to keep up with, our demands. So anyway, thanks again for coming, and we'll see you Easter Sunday, and wear your most beautiful bonnet.
Thank you.
Did you get that?
Okay.